recording this session, and that's what I was getting ready to tell you all, so that you can go back and listen to key pieces of information again. And for those that weren't able to join us, that they can learn from this webinar as well, and learn from all of you and your experience as we go through this. So we will post that on our website, both A and OER, as well as course sharing later this week, so that if your colleagues weren't able to join us, that you will be free to share that, and hopefully they learn from it as well. One second. Let's see. Not sure what was happening there. So I wanted to introduce the group. That is super exciting to be able to have all of their experience here, because I definitely would not know it all, and actually a very little piece of it. So we're going to do real quick introductions of those that will be presenting today, but then I hope that we all interact really well together and can learn from each other. So I know you all have different experiences that you're bringing to the table, and so we hope it to be interactive and not just presentation and no interaction between all of us. So Jana Moore is on the other side of the table from me, but she is the lead for the A and OER with the UN system. So we're just going to have everybody that is presenting, if you can at least wave or something so that people can see you, that would be great. And then you'll see them a little bit later. Kellie Grassman,
No.
you there?
Anyway, but thanks for asking. But it's just hard, John. I mean, it's.
Oh, if you are not muted and you're not talking, if you can mute yourself, that would be great.
I mean, so.
So Kellie's with S&T, and she's going to be give us a faculty perspective, especially on ADR. And then Mark Lunch and Dana Wren are here from.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Leslie. When you said, before you said that, I just realized I forgot to email you back. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Last week was a little.
I think, so mute everybody at the same time.
Trying that right now. Okay,
right.
There we go. And then Barb Hammer from Accessibility, and she's going to talk about accessibility and universal design. And will be joining us in a little while around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Danielle Fawcett, representing the registrar point of view from UMSL. Sherry.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, good morning. And then Sherry Pollard and Dale Sanders will talk to us from the bookstore perspective. And then Grace and Scott will talk about the library, and then we'll wrap it up with a faculty perspective on the course sharing side of things with Ruth Toffel. So, and then plenty of time for question and answers, but also just please ask questions as we go, because we don't want you to just listen to talking for the next couple of hours before we get to the Q&A session. All of the questions that were submitted ahead of time have been added to our end of our slides to make sure we've addressed them hopefully throughout the presentation, but if not, to clarify or do whatever we need to do to get going. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jana to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am so excited for having this webinar finally come together. This has been through some thoughtful planning on Carrie's part and my jumping on the bandwagon and, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We brought together these two groups primarily because we realized that within our own department, we had two programs that were essentially requesting services the same minutes or the same resources or almost the same. And so it made sense to bring everybody together. That way there's some cross-learning of knowledge. For course sharing, it's a little bit older program, more mature and fleshed out. There has been a request over time, especially as the financial situation for the institutions became a bit more difficult, that department chairs and faculty and others are realizing that we need the ability to be able to collaborate across the campuses, share expertise and knowledge with each other and with the students, so that students can benefit from the additional student opportunities, as well as faculty from the opportunity of collaboration. OER, which is for affordable and open education resources, is relatively new to the scene. We started this last fall, and it helps remove barriers for students who are especially low income, first generation, students that may not otherwise purchase materials. Maybe they're waiting on financial aid, and by the time they get to that point, the semester's gone too far, so that the chances of them dropping out, failing, etc., increase. So this will help improve retention and student outcomes, as well as, from a faculty perspective, really open up the opportunity to remix and refine, do whatever you want in the academic setting from an academic freedom standpoint. That is essentially the purpose of these programs, in case those that they're still very new to it. And I think that is sort of what encapsulates everything. I see that you're chatting on. I'm going to turn to Carrie to see if there are any questions that we need to answer before we move on.
No, there's a little bit of echo, so I'm dealing with that. And I will deal with that while we turn this over to Kelly to talk with us, and I will deal with the audio issue while Kelly graces us with her wonderful remarks. Kelly?
Okay, can you all hear me without any echo at the moment? Hopefully. Okay, so I'm Kellie Grassman from Missouri S&T, the Department of Engineering Management and Systems Engineering, and I teach several high enrollment engineering courses. So a couple courses that are required by almost all engineering disciplines. I've utilized open educational resources and affordable and open educational resources for these courses over several years. I teach more than 500 students a semester. So with that many students, efficiency for me as the instructor is really important, but also the value for my students, I think, is very important as well. They are, in one of the classes in particular, I'm teaching the students about money and finances, and so certainly finding the lowest cost way for them to participate in the class and get a text is important, leading by example on that one. So one of the courses that I teach involves math-based problem solving, and the students need a lot of practice with those problems. So it's important for me to be able to maintain a publisher's text that has a lot of support resources and allows for online homework. However, those publisher books are not cheap. So I was able to work through the Auto Access program, which if you haven't heard about yet, we probably will today. And it's basically just a system where there's a negotiated, very discounted rate for the students to access their textbooks. And so my students now pay less than half of the price that they did in the past for the same book, the same resources through that Auto Access program. And there was a bit of a learning curve of getting started and acceptance from the students, but now it's very automatic, it's very well managed, and we all appreciate the benefit. You know, a half-price book is a good deal. The other high enrollment course I teach relates to management, and it lends itself really well to using open educational resources. The course covers a really broad range of topics, and those topics evolve faster than any traditional print textbook would accommodate. So I designed that course several years ago using all open resources, and it really has allowed me to use up-to-date content that's really publicly available, that's ready for free online. I think it has been a good opportunity to meet the students where they are. On the web, they're not in love with sitting down with a print book. So instead of listening to a lecture or reading their print book, in this class they're exploring a lot of resources online, videos, simulations, and then their assignments relate to those, and we can discuss really current media, which I think is motivating for them. They don't have to purchase, students don't have to purchase anything for the course. And again, we use cases, video, either available free online or through library subscriptions, TED Talks and the like. So the content is really varied and allows me to update it regularly to stay current. So for me, that's just kind of a little snapshot of who I am and what I'm doing related to the topics today. I'm available, I know, later for questions, but I just wanted to share that I've found these open and auto access resources to be really valuable for me as an instructor and my students. Again, some learning curve. It takes some time to commit to something new, but overall it's been a nice positive for everyone.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly. Does anybody have any questions for her right away that we want to now? I'll have open question and answers later.
This is Kathy. I'm new to the University of Missouri, and I'm really curious about the auto access program. I heard a little bit about it yesterday in an orientation for one of the high enrollment classes I'm teaching, and we are concerned about the cost of the texts, as well as I'm really interested in what Kelly had to say about getting students to adapt to this, because it's really funny. Digital natives tend to be pretty print-centric when it comes to their textbook. So this may get touched on later, but I'd like to hear more about that.
Is this something that's going to be on the agenda, Jana, or do you want me to give the brief overview now?
This is pretty freeform. We have an agenda, but feel free to go forward now.
Okay, I can give you the summary version. I've came across the auto access program when it was very new, so I think it's more developed, and there's resources available to explain for you, and the bookstores support as well. I was using a publisher textbook with the associated online resource that allows the students to complete online homework. And again, that was really important for me because it was such a high enrollment course and they needed to be solving problems and getting feedback. The print book with that online resource was over $170, I think. Just the online resource itself, which is suitable, that would be sufficient for the students. Because they can view the text in digital form and do the online homework. That was on the order of $100, and the prices went up. You know, every semester the prices were going up, just as a function of how the textbook industry operates. With the auto access program, my understanding is that it's effectively a pre-negotiated rate between the university and the publisher. And so the students pay, again, about half of what they had previously, and they have automatic access to the online resource with the digital text. So it's about $45 now, I believe. And every student in my class, every student has to have that online resource to do the online homework. So there's really no way for them to get around that. It's required because that's how I grade their homework. So at the moment, the students pay like $46. The digital text and that online resource is automatically available to them in Canvas. That's the learning management system S&T uses. And so they're ready to go at the beginning of the semester. They do have the option to purchase, you could certainly get a used paper copy if you wanted to, and those are around because the book itself is a number of years old. What I found is that the students either find an old copy if they really want a paper book, or from that digital resource provided by the publisher, they can get, the PDF version of the text, and then they can print that a section at a time if they're interested. So it would certainly depend on the specific text that you're looking at, but once the students understood what to expect, and they didn't have to go to the bookstore to buy it, and we also explained that it was much less expensive for them to get what they needed, it's been a positive for everyone.
And can I just follow up? Is the main information resource for that, is it the bookstore itself or is it the publisher?
I would say that you need to start with the bookstore. You need to start with your campus resource, because I didn't have any involvement in the negotiating of the price. It was managed through the system.
And if I could jump in, Kelly, this is Jana. Actually have some representatives from the bookstores say cover the topic of access. So we'll get information.
Also, sorry. Also, there is a slide in the libraries portion which has the URLs for the auto access program at each of the campus bookstores. So depending upon what campus you're on, you can go to one of the URLs that's in our slide, and it'll take you to the bookstore's auto access program slide for that campus. And they're really helpful in helping you find good books in that program.
Great, thank you, Scott. I think we're going to go ahead and transition for now, but we definitely have plenty of time at the end for more questions. But I'm going to turn this over to Mark to talk to us a little bit about instructional design, and I believe Dana is going to join in throughout the presentation. So Mark?
Okay, thank you, Carrie. As Carrie mentioned, I'm Mark Lundstrom. I work with the Educational Technologies Department at Mizzou. I lead the instructional design unit for our campus. As you work through and look at the RFPs for either course sharing or for ANOER, you'll see referenced a number of times instructional design and instructional designers, and so that's a piece that I get to talk about this morning a little bit. I did notice that there are a number of instructional designers from other campuses as well on the call, so some of them have helped put together slides on this, so appreciate that. And then towards the end, I will also talk just about some of the specifics about course sharing. Dana Wren will cover more about the ANOER. So as far as instructional design goes with your courses, really our goals are the same as yours. How to make this course the best experience for your students, and also how to design and build your course as efficiently as possible. And that's really what instructional design does, is work toward making both of these things happen for a piece of instruction. It's essentially working through a systematic process to enhance the instruction in a course in a way that helps learners to achieve learning goals. So I'm going to describe a little bit about that systematic process that happens in instructional design. So you see on these three pieces here, let me move my slide here. So one of the most important parts is basically instructional design helps to make sure that your course learning goals are aligned with the activities and materials and the assessment that you have chosen in your course. So basically these three areas need to match up. Learning expectations that are set by learning goals need to match up with the learning activities that students participate in, and then also need to make sure that the assessments are measuring how well the learning goals are being met. So these are sort of this is sort of a core element of instructional design. But the next element, there are some other situational factors that are important. If you'll just advance, there we go. So these other factors are basically there in every course, whether you want them to be or not. They're always there. Some examples of these are who your students are and what their background is. You know, what do they bring to the course, essentially? Also, what kinds of access do you and your students have to technology? So again, these are factors that are just part of every course that need to be considered along with those other core elements that I mentioned earlier. Just a couple of additional examples about situational factors. There's always policies, right? Whether these policies are institutional or departmental, even federal and state policies apply to courses. They may be policies related to digital accessibility or diversity in courses, and any of a number of other things, right? Quality standards, whatever it is. So those are, again, additional situational factors that are considered in the process of designing a course. And then lastly, I guess, the one that I will mention anyway, sometimes there are actually requirements that may come from a grant that is funding the design of your course, such as course sharing or ANOER. So instructional design is basically the consideration of all of these things. So why meet with an instructional designer? So instructional designers practice instructional design, and all of the campuses have units that have instructional designers. One of the main reasons is that instructional designers have been designing and supporting shared courses and A&OER things for many years. So there's a lot of experience there that can be had in a conversation with an instructional designer. Also, that's more specific, I guess, in the course sharing context. But in the context of A&OER, instructional designers are actually sort of uniquely situated in that not only do they have a deep knowledge of instruction and technology, which is certainly areas of expertise for them, but in their everyday work, they work on a regular basis and have contact with other entities on campus that are really kind of critical for putting together an A&OER project. So these entities would be like libraries and the campus bookstore, the accessibility office, and the registrar. An instructional designer has a pretty good understanding about how all these pieces might fit together in putting together an A&OER resource, and therefore would be a good place to start in that process. Finally, as far as a reason to meet with an instructional designer, it's actually a part of the proposal process for course sharing. And they require that you meet with an instructional designer before you submit, and it's also one of the requirements in terms of receiving part of the funding if it is funded. It's highly recommended for A&OER projects to be involved with that as well. So at this point, you may be thinking, okay, so maybe there's some good reasons to meet with an instructional designer. I'm just going to take a few more minutes and talk about what kinds of conversations would be had, I guess, in a meeting with an instructional designer. So one of the first things, it may not be the first thing, but one of the important things that would happen in that kind of a conversation is an instructional designer can help you to put together a timeline for development for your course. It would be a timeline that ideally would complete the course before it runs, which in some cases can be unique depending on how people are used to doing things. Instructional designers can also, after talking with you and understanding really what the needs of the students are and what the needs of the course are, they can recommend a technology tool set that would help your course to be most successful. And that technology tool set would also, again, as part of that recommendation, would certainly have to take into account whatever other campuses are going to be involved with the course share. Of course, instructional designers, it's partly our job to help you avoid mistakes or pitfalls, things that we've encountered in the past in working with other faculty and other courses. Certainly something that we always try to help to avoid. Also, we can help you to review your course against quality standards, which are sort of best practice for online courses. And in going through that process, again, that's just another opportunity where everyone can help to avoid potential issues that might come up in a course. Essentially, instructional designers we're always up for conversation about engaging your learners, your students. That's what instructional designers do. We bring to that conversation creative ideas for solving teaching challenges. We can answer questions about Canvas and other educational technologies. We can also often provide information about teaching development and funding opportunities on your campus. So essentially, instructional designers are really great go-to people for any question related to teaching and using technology to support teaching. So for just the last couple of minutes on my part, I'm going to talk a little bit about the course sharing considerations. So again, Dana will talk more about A&OER. But as we know, not every campus is the same as the one that you are on. And so particularly for course sharing, that's critical to keep in mind. And instructional designers can really help you to think through the details of what needs to be considered when you're delivering a course on multiple campuses. So the first thing is learning environments. Most course sharing courses are 100% online courses and fully asynchronous. That's pretty typical. But there are some course sharing courses that are more synchronous in nature. They may have synchronous elements. A synchronous meeting, for example, where students from both campuses are meeting perhaps in a technological way at the same time. So that would introduce some additional coordination that needs to happen, whether that be scheduling rooms for both campuses, making sure that facilitation of technology happens at those same times. That sometimes includes staffing at both campuses as well. also, students need to be aware that there will be, a synchronous element required, even if they're at another campus. So those are some of the things as it relates to the learning environment. And by the way, each campus is a little bit different in terms of the kinds of rooms that they may have available for this. Some have dedicated rooms, and others do not for that kind of thing. The second piece is technology. So all the campuses have some shared or sort of similarities in terms of the kinds of technology that they offer for courses, but there are also some differences, especially as it relates to third-party kind of technology tools, and even within academic units on departments. So again, things to think about as we're sharing campuses across courses, particularly when it comes to, say, publisher content and ebooks and those kinds of things. Obviously, we need to make sure that students of both campuses have access to those things. Also, testing sites for proctored testing. So if your course is one that requires proctored testing, then we need to make sure, again, that's happening at both campuses and or multiple campuses, depending on how many is involved. Some campuses have some costs associated with that, and others do not. And again, coordination, moving materials back and forth between testing sites, making sure that people are aware, testing centers are aware, and that kind of thing. So the last two items on here, library resources, in particular e-reserves, are not always available. They may be available on the primary campus, which is offering the course, but those same resources may not be available on e-reserve in the secondary campus. So again, another consideration there. And finally, just help resources and support documentation for students. Every campus has procedures and processes to make sure that students are receiving the kind of support that they need, but it's going to vary from campus to campus in terms of how that happens. So again, just things that need to be considered when putting together a course sharing course. And I'm going to give it over to Dana. Also, I think at the end, contact information for all of the instructional design units at each campus will be available at the end.
Okay. Any quick questions for Mark? Or are we going to save all those to the end? We're going to save them, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm Dana Wren. I'm the director here at eTitMo, and one of the things I've been working on our campus is the AOER auto access and affordability and open options for faculty. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. There'll be more from the bookstores and different presenters throughout, so you'll definitely hear more. One thing I did want to say for Jana and Carrie, make sure that if only one of you can be talking at a time. That was the issue we had earlier, was just because you're in the same room, your mics are picking up each other. So just FYI.
Yes, we have it fixed now, I think.
Okay, good. Yeah, it hasn't been a problem for a while, so I thought you probably figured it out, but just so you know. So a little bit about auto access. I'm actually not going to cover this because the bookstore is going to talk about this more later on in the presentation. But OER, at MU, we have an actual OER site where you can go and check out kind of what to do if you're interested in adopting or adapting or creating OER. There's lots and lots of different options, but the good thing is we have lots of support and assistance available through the bookstores, the libraries, eTitMo, which is your instructional design unit. So there's lots of help available. So affordable is defined by the system as anything under $40 for the whole course. So there are a lot of affordable options, particularly in auto access. But there's also some completely free options depending on your course. As I mentioned, we've got lots of different support, and that's actually the best thing to do. It's hard to give a very general overview of OER because there's just so many options available, and it may be very specific to your course. The bookstores are keeping track, so even if you're using a fully open resource, you should let them know because they're keeping track across the system to see how much has been saved for students. And I'm sure Dale will present some of those statistics later on. Next slide, please. So when you're thinking about a proposal for the grant process, whether it's the OER process or the course sharing process, first thing to do, of course, from our point of view, is really to see your instructional design resources. They can help you write that proposal, and they're going to know, as Mark mentioned, they're going to know what are your options, what kinds of support, where to go, who to talk to, all of those kinds of things. So they're a very good starting point with that. It's always a good idea, particularly with course sharing, to use this as an opportunity to really rethink your course design and maybe rethink some ways that you might deliver some of the content or do some of the assessment. It's just kind of an opportunity. You're going to need to find out, and again, your instructional designer can help you figure out who you need to contact for your specific proposal. It's going to vary very much depending on what kinds of elements you're going to include. And same thing for the educational technology. We have just a tremendous suite of educational technologies, but then with choice, you have to kind of figure out what would be the best one for the job. So, of course, it's always a good idea to start the proposal well in advance of the deadline, so you have plenty of time to talk to the people that you need to talk to and to get it all figured out and a nice, smooth proposal submitted. So, go ahead, next slide, please. So being on the course sharing proposal committee I kind of put some insights in here on what makes a good proposal. So for course sharing, the kinds of things we look for is really, does it advance student learning? So, is it a good design for that online environment? Is it going to help those students learn across the campuses? We also look to make sure that it's easy for students from other campuses to access. If you have a proposal where they're required to visit 4 times in a semester, that's a lot more difficult than if it's fully online. So it's the easier, the better. We look at if you thought about accessibility. So if you thought about universal design and kind of picking technologies and designs that are accessible to all students. And as Mark referenced, uses technology that would be available to all students on all campuses. That's also a consideration. For AOER, same things, they're well thought out, materials meet the affordable or free definitions, and the proposal is really clear about the option chosen: affordable, adapting, creating. And again, talk to your instructional designers, talk to your libraries, talk to your bookstores, and they'll help you decide which option would be the best for you. Okay, next. We were asked to put some third-party tools on here. This is not a comprehensive list by any means. It is just constantly changing, and we're adding new things all the time. But these are some of the ones that we're most familiar with. So Vital Source, which is kind of a platform for different e-textbooks. You can bring in different things through it. We use it a lot here at MU. A new one in the market is Top Hat Textbook. You might also know it as Top Hat Marketplace. It's a brand new thing. So, they have the virtual clickers, but now they've had a marketplace where they've brought in some open resources and some paid for resources, and it allows students to access through that marketplace. We're seeing lots of publisher content tools. A lot of publishers are taking the OpenStax textbooks, which are completely free, and putting those homework wrappers and additional materials around those, and then reselling them as affordable. So that works well for students too. I'm sure Jenna or Carrie's going to talk to you more about, we're now OpenStax partners with the organization. So OpenStax actually offers a variety of completely free, very nice textbooks. Most of them are very introductory classes, but it's a lot of good resources in that area. Next. So as I mentioned, steps to implement: engage with your instructional designer, your librarian, and the Mizzou stores, or the bookstores. Sorry, I've said Mizzou stores because that's what they are here. Check out the resources available on your campus. Let them know what you're using so that we can track how students are saving money. Next one. Let your students know where the content is and how to access it. This is a really important one. Something especially we've run into with course sharing, where they need to go to the host campus's installation. And then the next semester, keep letting the bookstore know what you're using. So keep telling them if you're using affordable or open educational resources. And then think about maybe moving further into AOER as you're moving through these. Okay. And that's also probably going to be at the end, I believe, as well. So some of the contacts. All right, thank you.
Barry, am I up next?
Yes, you're next on the agenda.
I'm sorry. I thought that you could hear Jana, but I don't think you could. So she's going to talk again.
Let's try that again. I was so proud. I was just exclaiming how we'd figured out the audio, but clearly we had not. So I want to thank Dana and thank Mark for your sort of overview of instructional design. I think my biggest takeaway from both conversations is to go see your instructional designer. Mm-hmm. Regardless of whatever you're doing, go see them. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Barb Hammer from the Accessibility Office to talk a bit about accessibility and universal design. So with that, I will kick it over to Barb.
Thank you. Carrie, thanks for driving the slides. I really appreciate that. So you can just go to the next slide already. Yeah, I'm Barb Hammer, and I'm the director of the Disability Center at MU. And so I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues at the other 3 campuses as well. I'm just going to start by saying that if you have worked with students with disabilities, you're going to have some experience in terms of students asking for accommodations of one kind or another. Within the 4-campus system, I'd say probably between 3 and 5% of the students are going to report having a disability and request some kind of accommodation related to their coursework. And there are federal regulations that require post-secondary institutions to ensure equal opportunity. And these are 504, 508 of the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Both are civil rights laws intended to protect them from discrimination. So that's kind of a fundamental. So next slide. But what I'm going to talk about today is actually something a little different than just being required to do something, because that's really not the best way to do it, and we typically don't start with that. What we want to see you do is design with access in mind. If you do that, you're following basic principles of accessibility, but you also may want to explore a little bit more about universal design for learning. They go hand in hand. I'll be talking a little bit about both. So next slide. Okay, so let's define accessibility first. That's the design of products, devices, services, or environments for people with disabilities. And what I'm going to focus on today is on the tools and the technologies, because that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about course sharing, when we're talking about AOER. So next slide. So accessible design. You can either do accessible design that ensures direct access or indirect access. Direct access would mean something like creating a video or using a video for your course where there are captions on there and the student is actually reading the captions. It's very simple. It's a passive activity and they can actually, but it's accessible. Indirect access is when something is provided and it's compatible with assistive technology. A lot of software is designed that is not compatible with assistive technology. It's getting better, but if I am blind, and I'm going to talk about this a little more, and I'm trying to use some sort of software, I may have a lot of difficulty because I use a screen reader that makes it difficult for me to access that information. So next slide. So when you design for accessibility, you want to incorporate it into day-to-day processes. You want to see it as something that's not done after the fact and by someone else. That's what we recommend. So as you're designing courses, as you're redesigning courses, what you want to do is incorporate thinking about accessibility into that as just a routine. And I think you might say to yourself, okay, well, why did we do this? I mean, I'm required by law to do certain things. Some things I would expect the vendor to do. I would expect other things to be done by somebody else. But why do I need to do it? Well, frankly, it's going to benefit people without disabilities as well as those with disabilities. And I'm going to give some examples about that. But at basic level, what we want to try to do is reduce the responsibility or the need for students to request accommodation, if at all possible. And frankly, accessibility is just good design. It has multiple values. So next slide. So depending on some of the materials that you use, some images, charts, or graphs may not be accessible. And if they're not going to be worth anything to somebody who's blind unless they can be accessed by other means. You can provide access by ensuring that they have clear and straightforward text descriptions. And when you do that, not only is it benefiting the person who's using the screen reader, but it's also going to help all students, because if they have multiple ways of accessing the information, it might actually help them understand concepts better. It's the same with any media that you're going to choose to use, whether it's videos or audio files. Same thing here. If you don't have captions on them, if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you're not going to be able to get the information. But if you can access it through other means, the captions, then it's going to be good for the person who's deaf or hard of hearing, but it's also going to benefit people who have learning disabilities. It's going to benefit those whose first language is not English. It's going to benefit those who are in sound-sensitive environments, such as libraries or offices. So back to my point, accessibility is just good design. So the slide you see here is going back to the discussion of requirements, legal requirements, policy requirements. Section 508, standards for electronic and information technology, have been in existence for a long time. That's kind of a baseline of expectation in terms of accessible standards. The web content accessibility guidelines, those have to do websites. Those standards are also in place and require websites and software programs to be accessible, web applications. We also have at MU a policy on digital accessibility of communications and information technology. This policy was adopted last August, a year ago now, and we are in process of developing some mechanisms to ensure that that policy can be implemented campus-wide. What I would say here is what I've said before. I'm going to keep repeating this. If you're considering new technology, if you're considering educational resources for the course, whether they're AOER, whether they're not, and what I would encourage you to do is keep accessibility in mind as you're doing the design process. Because if materials are designed from the ground up, they're going to be much more workable for students, the less that you're going to have to do or we're going to have to do in terms of providing accommodations for the students after the fact. Okay, next slide. I put this in here because I thought, okay, we talk about affordable, open educational resources. I think we should just say they should always also be accessible resources. If you just have that as your kind of way of thinking, you're going to be in good shape. Next slide. Okay, so I want to touch a little bit about universal design for learning because it really does go hand in glove with accessibility. UDL, according to the Center for Applied Special Technology, which is CAST, is a set of principles for curriculum development, and it gives all individuals equal opportunity to learn. It provides a framework that addresses the primary barrier to learning, and that's basically an inflexible one-size-fits-all approach. Instead, it offers flexibility, a customized approach. It's adjusted for individual needs. And if you think about it, your students are going to be variable. Learners vary in their abilities, in their backgrounds, in their motivations. Variability is actually the norm. And so course design offers multiple means of representation, which is the what of learning. It represents multiple means of action and expression, the how, and multiple means of engagement, which is the why of learning. A good way of thinking about it is that it's a proactive intentional way to acknowledge and value the diversity of all of your learners. So, next slide. One of the reasons that those of us in disability services like UDL is because of the flexibility, because it actually does allow for the individual approaches to learning, and because if it's effectively utilized, again, like just thinking in terms of accessibility, it's going to likely reduce the number and types of requests for accommodation. Okay, so next slide. So I think these again will be at the end of the whole thing, but these are resources that we put together. UMKC Online, I'm just going to give real kudos to. I commend the instructional designers there for their work on that website because it offers accessibility checkers, it offers steps for making materials accessible, but it also, on the website, embraces the idea that accessible design and universal design go together. It gives a number of examples showing its benefit to a wide diversity of learners, and so it's a great resource. I mean, we envy it right now because it looks really good. Accessibility at Mizzou is a website that's a work in progress. It's stemming from the digital accessibility policy that's been passed here on campus. I think if you're on the MU campus, you'll want to keep an eye on that one because we're going to be rolling out more information on that website probably over the next few months. The rest of these sites are all obviously different institutions. They're going to have information that are specific to their institutions, but each of them has some real valuable resources that you might find helpful. Next slide is resources on universal design for learning. I can't recommend the book by Dr. Bergstaller highly enough. That's a real wealth of information. Hand in hand with that is the website on the Center for Universal Design and Education, which is from University of Washington, which is where Dr. Bergstaller lives, basically, and works. And so I think those two resources together are fabulous. The Center for Applied Special Technology, CAST, also has some wonderful resources, and those links there, I think, could get you to some good information. So Mark and Dana talked about the instructional designers. I'm going to echo that because I think your instructional designers should be your first point of contact when you're thinking about designing the course. And when you are having questions about accessibility or UDL, they are also your best first line of support and assistance because they understand this. They are learning it, they work with it all the time. We here at MU have additional resources in our Adaptive Computing Technology Center. They work closely with ET at Mo, and they work closely with our office. I think each of the campuses has a different structure, and so you would need to take a look at how that looks on your own campus. And then the last slide for us is basically just a list of who is in your respective disability services offices. We all have different names, but we all do basically the same thing. At MU, in addition to the Disability Center, we have the ACT Center, which has been on this campus a great resource for assisting people with all kinds of questions with respect to accessibility. And I know one of the things that I was asked to focus on here was the cost of some accommodations, probably most likely captioning, because that can cost money to do. I might not address that right now, but touch on it later if people have questions about it. It seemed probably more complicated than I wanted to get into right here. So,
thank you so much, Barb, for your great comments. And we're running just a couple minutes behind, but I think that's fine. We want to engage with you all, and we haven't heard from those of you attending in a little bit. So just wanted to see what technologies you all are currently using or some experience that you've had that has helped you grow or improve your course based on instructional design or universal design and accessibility. So just wanted to hear from a couple of you before we move on. So anybody feel free to unmute and tell us a little bit about what you learned so we can learn from you. Come on, I know some of y'all.
They're all clamoring to jump in. They can't unmute fast enough.
All right. Anybody? All right. Well, I hope that a ton of you are going to be able to talk after this. And once you've been able to
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is Clark Peters. I'm at Mizzou, and I'm on this call because I'm the chair of faculty council right now. And so I have a question. I think it's been answered, but I just wanted to get your perspective. So a lot of times I use articles, research articles for my class, and they're not open access, right? They're behind a firewall, but our students have access to them, or have in the past. What I'm coming across recently is that because of cuts to our library budget, fewer of those articles are, we don't have subscriptions. So I myself have to obtain them through interlibrary loan. Does that mean I can share them? I think probably not, but I just don't know if that's a problem you've come across before. And I will mute and listen for the answer.
Looks like Grace unmuted, and she's from Mizzou. So since it's a Mizzou question, I think it's good that she answer it, because each of the universities probably have a little bit different take on that, but she can help us. Grace?
I'm with the University of Missouri Libraries, and I'm hoping Scott Curtis will unmute and jump in as well.
Yes.
Because this was something that we were planning on addressing in our portion today, because it's definitely increasingly an issue. Scott, can you jump in and get answered this specific one with ILL items?
Sure. With ILL items, they cannot be directly shared in your course instance. What you would have to do is talk to the library and arrange for them to get a license to be able to share them. And that's going to have to be handled by the individual library for that particular item. Your question gets to a more general question about linking it with journal articles in courses. And the libraries encourages the use of library resources in classes, because that's why we're here, is for research and teaching. And something to be sure to do when you do link to a journal article in your course is to provide the link that leads the students through the library databases and journal subscriptions to get the article. Do not download the article at your office and then put a PDF of that article up on the Blackboard or Canvas instance. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, that gets really dicey with US copyright law. And that might get us into a situation like has been going in litigation with Georgia State for a number of years about whether or not that's a fair use of material to handle it that way. The second reason gets to your concern about not being able to find the journal articles that you had been linking with because of subscriptions. Linking to the articles so that the students have to go through the library subscriptions to access that journal article. We have this kind of data gathering called Counter, and it will count each usage of that article. So in tight budgetary times, if we can show that certain journals are being accessed a lot, that is favorable for those journals in situations where we have to cut. So for those reasons, you would want to handle it in that way.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll share a bit more about that, but I'm going to put in a link for the MU reserves page so that you can see where to request if we don't have something and you need it for your class.
Thanks for the question. I know Scott and Grace are going to share a lot more with us, and I think one of the take-homes for this whole webinar is to talk to those at your university that are involved with these different key areas. Obviously, everyone's not speaking because that would be a whole day long, but that every university is a little bit different and across all of these areas, but it's to give you key pieces of information that'll allow you to then have the conversations at your university to be sure that you're following the guidelines that you need from all the way from our first presentation, which was around instructional design, all the way to our last presentation, which is around the library. So I think that's a key take home, and that you can take nuggets from all of these things and be a little more well-informed as you go into the course sharing or OER proposal process. So thank you for the question. We're gonna turn it over to Emily, who's gonna talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. Right, Emily, on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks to Carrie and Jana for hosting this awesome webinar. It's been fun to sit in and hear some of the presentations. So thank you. My name is Emily Love. I serve at the University of Missouri System in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I also have a role at MU as Director of Administration for the division. I want to start by saying that I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to inclusive teaching. I do, however, coordinate and manage and administer the awards that we've allocated as part of the OER grant application process. So today I'm going to briefly share why we do this, a little bit about what inclusive teaching means, and how we assess the awards and how that works. And then I'll open it up for questions. And if anyone has inclusive teaching practices that they've implemented that they'd like to share, I encourage you to be thinking about those, because I'd love to hear from you all on what you're already doing. So why do we offer these awards? Our goal is really to incentivize these practices, but more importantly to show that as a system, we value the time, the effort, the energy that it takes faculty to make even small changes to the classroom environment or the curriculum or any component of a course. So what does inclusive teaching mean? It means inclusivity at the level of the curriculum and course design, but it also includes inclusive teaching strategies, includes the things that Barb was sharing earlier about accessibility, as well as proactively addressing classroom climate, especially, the more we see political divides in the United States, and also anticipating the needs of diverse learners. So Jana and Carrie will be sending you a list of awesome resources that we've compiled to help think through how these can be included in your course. And Columbia University is one of those universities that has a lot of resources, and they've identified 5 principles of inclusive teaching. The first of which is to establish and support a class climate that fosters belonging. The research shows that a sense of belonging is very much tied to student success and positive student outcomes. The second principle that they identify is setting explicit expectations of students. The third is to select course content that recognizes diversity and acknowledges barriers to inclusion. The fourth is designing all course elements for accessibility, which Barb spoke about, as well as reflecting on one's own beliefs. So doing that inner work to say, okay, what are the things that I inherently believe about teaching, and maybe challenging them a little bit, which will only affirm your commitment to inclusion and foster a better environment for all students. So how is this done? So we have essentially an add-on to the OER grant application that asks you a few questions about what kinds of inclusive teaching practices will you be implementing. This year was our first year. We awarded 6 faculty awards in the spring, and we're hoping that more faculty apply this year. Because it's such a new program, we're learning a lot, and I really do value your feedback. So if there are things that we could be doing better, please let us know. But right now, plans are evaluated by first their overall intentionality. So I think earlier someone was giving a presentation talking about, is this well thought out? Have you demonstrated a level of complexity and understanding what could you do to improve the classroom with regards to inclusion? Is your plan clear and precise? Are you proactive in using resources? Every campus has amazing diversity and inclusion offices that can assist. So we want to see that you are engaging in those kinds of conversations. Second, one of the factors that we consider is the amount of effort it will take to implement the practice. So are you redesigning something? If so, you may, float up to the higher tier of the funding. If you're doing a syllabus review, that's awesome. But if that doesn't take as much effort, then you may get an award, but it may be on the lower end. So just keep that in mind when you're applying. And then the final thing that we look to consider is the impact that you're having. If you have a metric-driven approach, I know it can be really tough to measure outcomes and say that they are, associated with some change in the course. But definitely if you include something in your application about how many students you're reaching, and get creative. We're really only limited by our creativity. So if someone that came up with a great proposal this last year talked about increasing interest in taking the class outside of their traditional student groups that they see the same faces, time and time again. So, I'd say get creative with how you would want to assess the impact. And if metrics are included, that's always something that gets you more points. So I am going to stop there. And first I want to see if anyone wants to share any inclusive teaching practices that you've been using. And if not, well, yes, let's do that. And then we can save time for some questions. So open it up to anybody. Anybody have any questions?
Hi, this is Tiffany from UMKC School of Education. I can share one practice that I started doing last year at the request actually of one of my students who has English as a second language. I started sharing my discussion questions for class discussions in advance of our course meetings, posting them on our course website so that he and others who might need additional time to prepare could think about those questions and their responses prior to our class discussion.
That's a great one. Thank you for sharing.
I'm just going to speak up and say I think that's a great solution that not only addresses the concern of the student whose first language is in English, but also students with disabilities, learning disabilities, cognitive challenges of different kinds. So that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, little changes can really have a big impact.
Hi, this is Kellie Grassman. I have a question, Emily.
Yes.
Do you have any web resources or any documentation about the application for the diversity, equity, and inclusion grants? Are there any specific guidelines or where can those be found?
Yes, so it is tied to the OER application process right now. And so when you apply for those grants, you are asked if you're interested in applying for diversity, equity, and inclusion funds as well. Afterwards, I can share what those application questions are. I'm not sure if you can see them without actually going into the Qualtrics form. And then online, we also have, on the Academic Affairs website, there's a list of the tiers. So there's a $500, a $1,000, and a $1,500 level. And those funds are, I meant to say, they're intended to be used for professional development, any sort of conferences that you want to attend, other sorts of resources that help you, that cost money. That's what these funds are for. And I will also be sending a list of resources from outside of the university. So University of Michigan does a great job with inclusive teaching. Columbia University has those principles. There's quite a few things that you can dive in deep to. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Emily is not able to keep on for the Q&A at the end. She's got some other exciting things going on today. But I would just want to give another opportunity for anyone to ask her questions. And then I know we have her email available for you all. So I know she'd be willing for you all to reach out and ask her questions afterwards. But anybody have questions for her? Okay, I'm taking silence. No, yeah. But thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you
for
Please
your
feel
help.
free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Absolutely, and yes, we have everybody's contact information to try to help help with those connections as you need them. So thanks, Emily.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks.
All right, so now we're gonna turn it over to Danielle at UMSL to talk about the registrar perspective. Danielle?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm Danielle Fawcett. I work at UMSL in the Office of the Registrar, and I'm going to be speaking for my colleagues at the other 3 campuses as well today. And I'm just going to basically talk about our role in the course sharing process as the Office of the Registrar and curriculum scheduling and what we can kind of do to help you guys make sure your courses are out there and set up correctly and linked for the upcoming terms. So next slide, please, Carrie. All right, so the first thing to get your courses set up, we need to know in the Office of the Registrar what courses are going to be shared and when. So ideally, you would contact your departments when you're setting up your schedule for the next term. So right now we're working on spring 19. You would hopefully tell us now what courses are going to be shared, where do they originate, are you primary or secondary on your campus, and what course is it shared with. And then what we do in our office here and at the other campuses is we code the courses with a primary or secondary attribute on the course, and then also put a note to the students that it is a shared course with another campus. Then after that, we'll go in and link the courses in the course sharing app and make sure they're correctly linked to the right course on the other campus. That's where it's really important to tell us what courses it's shared with, maybe give us a title so we can make sure that we're linking the correct courses. And then also after that, you'll want to check your LMS. So you'll want to check Canvas and make sure that we correctly link those courses and that the students are flowing in correctly. Next slide, please, Carrie. All right, so when the schedule of classes is built and ready for the next term, when it's publicized, typically here at UMSL, system will send out an email, so Carrie and her team will send out an announcement asking instructors to check their shared courses. This is really vital to what we do here in the registrar's office because it lets us get a second look at the schedule and make sure that your courses are out there and linked correctly. If you do not see your course out there or you see a course that is out there incorrectly, please contact us as soon as possible because we want to get that fixed for you. We don't want to have courses out there that aren't being shared for the term or ones that should be out there that aren't. Some helpful reminders that we put together for you is that the registrar's office cannot link a course across terms. So if you have a summer course at MU and a fall course here at UMSL, we cannot link those courses. They have to be in the same term. I say that because some of our terms are different across the 4 campuses and some of our dates are different as well. We have had this happen in the past, so it's just a friendly reminder that they have to be in the same term. A course can also not be denied in order to be linked, so it has to be approved in order to be linked. We can't link stuff that has been denied. We will let you know if that is a problem, and if you're trying to link a course that has been denied, we will reach out to you. And also to make the linking process more efficient, please send the registrar's office both course numbers and titles, again, so we're making sure we are linking the correct courses, the instructor information for both sections. This just helps us see who's teaching on the other campus and who our point of contact should be should we have questions. One of the things that a lot of the instructors here at UMSL ask is, are there students enrolled on the other campus? Unfortunately, the registrar's office cannot see the enrollment on the other campus, so we'll reach out for you and say, hey, are there students enrolled in your section? So having that instructor information for the other campus is really helpful for us, so we can reach out for you if needed. And then also any special topics that should be listed on the course are very helpful. That way, again, we can know we're making sure we link the correct courses and that those topics are listed on the course if it is a topics course, so that it's transcripted for the student. Next slide, please. Reminder on transmitting grades. This is just a friendly reminder that FERPA protected data should never be sent via email. One of the things that we have run into with course sharing is that the secondary instructor can't get the primary instructor the grades easily, I guess you could say. So it's been emailed before, and this is just a reminder from the registrar's office that FERPA protected data, again, should not be sent via email. So if you want to pick up the phone as secondary instructor and read the grades over the phone, that's allowable, but please, please, please don't submit those over email. It's just not safe. And then IT changes are in development to allow transmittal of grades in Canvas. We are working on it. We know it's been a problem in the past, and it's not ideal to pick up the phone, but we are aware of it and hopefully working on a solution. And then the next slide, please. So this is just some resources I put together. It's the schedule of classes. I just wanted to link these to make sure you can go out there and see your courses are listed and look correct for the upcoming terms. If you ever have questions about your courses or if they're coded correctly or linked correctly or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to your registrar's office. We are more than happy to help make sure that this is set up prior to the term starting so that it's a smooth transition for all students involved and faculty. Do you have any questions for the registrar's office or anything that I can help you with?
Hi, Daniel. This is Jana.
Hey, Jana.
I have a question about OER and affordable courses.
Okay.
How do students know if the course is affordable or if it's an open course? Do you know?
Yes, there should be an attribute on the course as well saying that. Unfortunately, we do not load those. I think the bookstore loads those based on a list that they receive, and then they just run a system and the attribute goes onto all of the courses. But there is an attribute that the students can search in the class search page that will tell them if a course is one of those courses that has that open access.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna mute. Any other questions from the group about how to work with the registrars or how to get your courses properly labeled so that they get updated in the system and everything runs smoothly and there's no hiccups along the way?
I think the good news is we try to really communicate often, and so that we can see the status of things. And this is Carrie, by the way. And so I work with all of the registrar contacts for course sharing quite frequently as the term gets closer. So Danielle and I have become long lost friends over the last few weeks. To just make it a seamless process, both for the faculty and for the students, and to try to really make it a great experience where you can all learn from each other and build upon each other's knowledge. So.
Yes, and thank you, Carrie, for all that you do for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Danielle. All right, we're ready to transition, and if nobody else has questions for Danielle, to Sherry and Dale at the bookstore.
Good morning. This is Dale Sanders. I am the Senior Associate Director for Campus Stores. And Sherry Pollard's in the room with me. She's hiding around the corner, so she might chime in if there's any additional questions. But I wanted to kind of go over a little bit about us before we kind of get into some details about the AOER program. So we operate all of the stores on the 4 universities in the system. And so we all report up through a single entity, Sherry. And so as we are implementing programs, we can negotiate with publishers at a system level, and we can implement programs for the entire system, which creates a number of efficiencies to get things rolling much faster. So we operate on a shared services model for a number of our services, but course materials is the big one that allows us to support the AOER initiative. Next slide. So a couple of items that I thought might be good for this audience. This is based on a survey done here at the Mizzou campus only. 61% of students have chosen not to purchase a required textbook, and 75% of students have delayed purchasing a required textbook. That contrasted with only 11% of faculty aware of how many students delay purchasing textbooks creates quite a disparity. And auto access, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit here shortly, is a way that we can try to help close that gap. 17% of students say lack of access in course materials has negatively impacted their grades, and 13% of students have considered leaving Mizzou because they could not afford course materials. So those are examples of why the AOER initiative is so important. And all programs that we implement, auto access or otherwise, are designed to save students money. Interestingly, we, based on that survey, show that approximately 30% of faculty are using OER, which is great, but we're not aware of that necessarily. And so this goes back to we just need to be included as those decisions are made so that we can track that for reporting purposes and benchmarking and those types of things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Next slide. So I think we've kind of discussed this, but this is just a definition of affordable and open educational resources. Our role is primarily in the affordable area, although we dabble in the OER area to assist in any way that we can. But our charge is to try to implement course material programs that meet that $40 threshold. And $40 for the entire course, all materials. So whether that's one book or 5 books or a book and a clicker or lab goggles or whatever the case may be, the total cost should be $40 or less to meet the affordable definition. Not everything gets there, and so we do track decisions that are made that save students money, even if it doesn't meet that $40 threshold, but that's the goal. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about auto access. Kelly earlier did a phenomenal job explaining exactly what auto access is, so I'll just hone around the edges here. But auto access was created in 2014. And we started it, as I said, just like any program, as a way to try to drive down the cost for our students. That was the primary goal, and it's still the goal. There are additional benefits that we've discovered along the way, including students having access to the materials day one, and everything accessible through the LMS, through Canvas, the first day of class. And we work very closely with the educational technology groups on each of the universities to ensure that that content integration has taken place. We currently have 13 publishers that have partnered with us on this program, and we negotiate directly with them for system-wide implementation. They cannot include their content into auto access unless it is the absolute cheapest price on the market. And since the AOER initiative has been announced, we have a number of them coming to us trying to drop their prices even lower so that they can say, hey, we are participating in the affordability initiative at the University of Missouri system. So that's exciting. We work with faculty and students to try to streamline the communication for auto access. So this was kind of a secondary benefit of the auto access program, was a way to try to simplify the communication around digital content in the classroom. So there's a lot of confusion and noise in the marketplace about these types of digital products, ebooks, digital books, advanced digital courseware, all of these different types of products. And we wanted to just simplify that by branding it as our own, and it's auto access. And then students don't really need to know the differences of the digital content. Faculty likely know, but don't really need to figure out a way to communicate it to students. And so the faculty can say auto access, students can say auto access, and everybody knows exactly what it is and how it's accessed within the LMS. We monitor student enrollment in those classes, and so we are able to charge the students a student account if they are enrolled in an auto access course for that material, and if they drop, we will refund them. So all of that happens automatically on the back end, and they still get an opportunity to opt out of the material if they choose to do so. So if it is a flat ebook, for example, and somebody took the course previously and had a book and they give them the book, they can opt out of this material, and so they don't pay anything, but they do lose access to the digital content. Next slide. So a couple of the things, Dana did a great job explaining how important it is to include us in the decision of the content in the class, and a lot of times the assumption is that we need to know so that we can bring it in and sell it, and certainly we need to do that for students who are on financial aid or need to pay with scholarships, but there are other reasons as well. For benchmarking and metrics to support the AOER initiative, that's a big one. We need to know how many OER courses are being, or how much OER content is being used in our courses on campus so that we can benchmark year over year. We want to be able to track cost savings semester over semester as students so that we are, in fact, driving down the cost for students as a university, as a system. And we're only going to be able to know that if we really know what's going on in the classes. HEOA compliance is another one. So HEOA, if you're not familiar, is the Higher Education and Opportunity Act. It's a very large piece of legislation that has a little piece of textbooks in it. And basically it says that universities need to post the cost of course materials and make it available for students so that when students are registering, they can use that information to make decisions on which classes they'd like to enroll in. I think the legislation says when possible or as quickly as possible. And so we are that channel for communication to our students across the entire system. So even if it is something that is not, that we're not going to sell, that where it's a website they go direct to buy something, whatever the case may be, we just need to know so that we can post it out there and make sure our students can find it as easily and efficiently as possible. And then along those same lines, because our goal and our charge is to reduce the cost for students and the course materials, we can be that resource to do research to make sure that whatever content is being used really is the best price. And so if a publisher rep has come to the faculty office and has sold this wonderful cheap product, that's great, and maybe it is a wonderful cheap product, but then we can do some research on the back end and identify where the publisher is sending the students really is the best option for those students. So those are some examples on why it's important to make sure that we're included in that conversation. Next slide. So here's some examples of the data that we collect. This information is exclusive to Auto Access. So Auto Access price on average is $65.39, down from $132.87 from the previous adoption. Like Kelly said, it's about half the price by moving it into Auto Access. We're not below that $40 threshold for Auto Access, but we're making progress. A number of the Auto Access adoptions are below the $40, but there are some that are not. And so the goal is to keep chipping away, keep reducing that cost for our students. Spring of 17, total student savings from Auto Access alone from the previous adoption was $2.5 million. And that was system-wide. So $2.5 million that we were able to save students just in one semester alone. It was a little over $5 million for the year, $5.3 million. And that's growing. Auto Access is still growing significantly. Since we started in the summer of 2014, we this summer eclipsed $10 million in savings for our students, so $10.1 million through the implementation of Auto Access. So that's a number we're really proud of, and we hope that it continues to grow. I don't have any slides about the OER savings, but I can give you some information about it. OER, in terms of us knowing about what's being used on campus, is fairly new. Last fall, we knew about 7 classes system-wide that we're using OER. Good news is that we know about upwards of 130, 135 that are using it for this fall. So that's great. So they're either OER adoption is increasing, or we're just included in the information, or both. So those are really good numbers. OER is a little bit less clean to calculate student savings, but I estimate the savings for this fall alone is going to be around $200,000 from faculty choosing to use OER products. So it's exciting. There's progress being made, and we're here to support you in any of these choices. And that's all that I have. So I guess if there are any questions, I can take questions, or we can wait till the end.
Dale, we do have some feedback and some questions. Got my screen to jump here. There's a question from a faculty member that asks, does auto access mean that students are automatically opted into the program unless they opt out? How do they do the latter, and how do they know what the former costs, or what the former will cost? And I think that also we had a faculty member provide some feedback from personal experience. So I'm going to ask either Dale or Sherry and Kellie Grassman to jump in and answer that question.
Sure, I can address the mechanics of it, and then maybe if Kellie or someone else would like to jump in from a faculty perspective. But so students find out about it via two methods. So we post it on our website so that it's available, so that they know how much that's going to cost. We also email all the students directly. So if they're in an auto access course, as they're approaching the first day of class, they'll get an email from us and with a link to a portal, a student portal, and it says, hey, these two classes are classes that have auto access content. Here's the price that is going to be charged. If you would like to opt out, click this button. And so they just click a button right there, either in the email or through the portal, and it will opt them out of that content. So it is opt-in. If they do nothing, they'll have access to the content, and they'll get charged on their student account automatically. And so it does require action for them to opt out. They can also go to our website right there where it lists the content and the price. They have an option to opt out right there within our website. So they click the opt-out button, and it flows to us. There's no questions asked on our end. We opt them out, and we either don't charge them or we issue them a refund. They have that ability all the way up until the add drop deadline. So if they drop the course, they're going to get a refund, and if they choose to opt out in that amount of time, they will get a refund. And so that's really how the opt-out option works. I don't know if Kellie wants to jump in or anybody else wants to jump in from a faculty perspective.
This is Kellie. I'd just like to add that I, with all of my courses, whether auto access or not, try to reach out to students before the semester begins just to give them some details about their options to purchase whatever resource it may be that they need for the course. And so since I've adopted auto access, I do send them a message even before the Canvas site is available. I send it through our registration system and let them know that this is how it will work for this course, that you'll have access to the resource that is required for the course. And I also emphasize that the resource is required. They'll need to have that online environment in order to do their homework and get a grade in the course. And I also share, again, because it's the money class for engineers, I also share that their purchase options in the past were much more expensive. And so this is a good way for them to get what they need for the course. I think when I first started, there was a little confusion with the bookstore. And if I recall correctly now, the bookstore actually designates the auto access when the student looks up what resources would be required for the course. So if you go to the bookstore website, it'll say this is an auto access course and there's nothing on the shelf necessarily for them to purchase. Or if there is an alternative like hardbound copy on the shelf, it's just listed as optional, but then they're informed right in the bookstore that it's an auto access course.
So newbie question here for if students come in, I mean, I live by the great umbrella theory of life, which is if you have it, you won't need it. If you don't, you damn sure will. So I just want to know, for a student who comes in on the first day of class and they say, oh, I never got that email from the library, or from the bookstore, what do you tell them? I mean, if they somehow are in the class but don't know about auto access or haven't gotten looped in, what do they need to do?
So we try to simplify that piece as best as possible. So we refer everyone to one website, or I'm sorry, one email address. So autoaccess@missouri.edu or autoaccess@mst.edu. We have one for each campus, and they all filter into a unified inbox on our end, and we monitor that all the time. So especially when classes are starting. So if a student wants to email us and say, hey, I didn't get that email, I'd like to opt out, great, we can do that for them on the back end. They always have the opportunity just to go to our website and look up the class and opt out directly from there. We can resend the email to them. We'll work with them and make sure that they're taken care of, whatever their needs are. Another piece I just wanted to throw out there, this program has grown so much that this spring alone, system-wide, with the help of the educational technology teams, we delivered over 40,000 auto access materials. So there's some duplicates in there that students took multiple classes, and so it wasn't really 40,000 students. I don't know the unique number of students, but it's a lot. So it's gotten to the point now where students kind of know what it is and they look for it, and so there's less and less confusion, at least with the older students, about what auto access is or what this email is that they got, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Dale. And I'd like to think of myself as a more seasoned student, not an older student.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Thank you. Dale is going to stick around, and so we'll have some more Q&A towards the end that we can talk about this. I have a question for you before we transition to the next topic. I think this is one that maybe faculty think about, but they don't ask. I'm going to ask on behalf of the group. Why would the bookstore participate in programs that essentially cost them money? Or, it seems like you're going to be losing this opportunity to sell published textbooks and bring that money in. How does the bookstore reconcile kind of those two ideas?
So it's important to remember that we are part of the university. So we are Mizzou, we are S&T, we are UMSL. So we are not a leased store. So whatever the university charges, that's our charge. And so if there's no doubt that programs like this negatively impact our budget, and we are an auxiliary that generates revenue. So we have to generate enough revenue to keep the lights on and pay our staff. But if the campus charge is to reduce the cost of materials, to increase enrollment, increase retention, we ultimately benefit from that as well through additional sales in other categories. So it's a balance. There's no doubt about that. But whatever the campus would like us to do is what we're here for. Do you want to add anything to that, Sherry?
Hi, everyone. We thought it was less confusing with one computer going. Yeah, what Dale has said is absolutely correct. We're owned and operated by the University of Missouri, so I think we've always been focused on affordability in one way or another. We were probably one of the first institutions in the country to get into the rental deal, and we do still rent books. We still sell used books, and we still sell standalone ebooks. But the digital conversion has been huge for us. Over 53% of our sales that go through us now are digital. We find that price is a driver for students, and this seems to be working for everyone. And really, really, we're pleased that we're saving so much money. Now, Some of the campuses depend on the money that the stores make for their budgets, and we are in discussions with them because we are certainly seeing that impact happen. But so far, we've been able to balance it well, and that's our intent for the future as well.
Wonderful. So the takeaways that I have is that the bookstore is going to help you find the lowest cost possible price if that's an avenue that you want to go. They'll even post other materials, whether it's open or not, just so the students themselves know what content will be required and what's optional in the course. The other takeaway that I have is that could you share an auto access course through the course sharing program?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't. I don't know that we would. I don't know that it would change anything for us. I think it would just depend on which instance of the LMS the students are accessing the content through, and if that piece is shared or not would probably just change how we need to communicate between the 4 universities.
Great. And so ensuring that whatever materials you have on one campus is also available at the other campus would be helpful. Right. Thank you, Sherry and Dale. I foresee probably a lot more questions, but in the interest of time, I see that we've almost slid an entire time slot. My apologies to Grace and Scott, but they're bringing us on home here with the library conversation. So we'll take it away and let the 2 of them walk us through the library resources.
Thank you very much. And a lot of what we have to say for the libraries is some reinforcement. Next slide, please. Lo and behold, here are the auto access URLs for the various campus bookstores. You know, we have 4 slides in our presentation, and we think highly enough about auto access as being something that is worthwhile for faculty to consider over their traditional selections that we've included it for 25% of our slide space. The reason why auto access is so good in terms of having the course material available at the beginning of the term is that one of the principal reasons that students would delay purchasing textbooks is that they haven't received their student financial aid or their student loan. They may not receive that until 3 weeks into the term. And they wait to see that they get that money. And then they make a decision at that point, well, I've gone this far without the book. Can I go without it at all? And that's a situation where they're already behind on the course then, and they're less likely to buy the material. And if they don't buy the material, they're more likely to have problems in the course, and they're less likely to pass the course. And as a university, we're less likely to retain them as students in the long term. So having the course materials available at the beginning of courses is vital, and auto access is one way to help ensure that. Another thing that works really well for the students in having the materials available in the Canvas instance is the auto access is billed onto their student bill. So it's easy to pay with their student money when that comes in. Books are something that students know they should budget for, but it's kind of a variable expense for them at the beginning of the school year. And even though it's not the largest principal component of what they're spending on school, tuition and room and board is by far larger. The way it hits students and when it hits students, it can be a real obstacle to their success. So, you know, after having been involved with this Affordability and Open Education Resources Program for a couple of years now, we really value a partnership with the bookstores in providing the affordable access and the auto access that they do provide, because it's saving students a lot of money. So next slide, please. Thinking about resources for your courses and how you might use library resources for the course, okay? I talked a little bit earlier in answer to a question about journals. There are also ebooks. All of the campuses have a selection of ebooks from different subscription packages that we have. If you want to use an ebook in your course, it's important to search in the Merlin catalog. So from your library catalog at your campus, you can search all of Merlin. And Merlin covers all of the libraries at all the campuses. And by searching there, you can confirm that the ebook is held at all campuses. While an ebook may be held at the campus where you originate, you need to make sure that it's at the other campuses so that students who are doing a course share from that campus will be able to get to that book. The reason for that is that different libraries have different subscription packages that might have these books in them. And each library has its own, from a techie's perspective, each library has its own proxy server and things. So if you just put an ebook for, say, UMKC, and there's a student who's taking the course at Mizzou, they're going to click on that link for UMKC, be prompted for their single sign-on to authenticate, and UMKC is going to say, you're not a student at UMKC, and they're not going to be able to access the book. So it's important to, if you're using an ebook, make sure that each campus has that ebook access at their libraries. And if you find that there's a campus that does not have that, you can fill out a purchase request form, usually from the library's website. There's a link to a sample purchase request form at UMKC in this slide deck. And what libraries are very tight on budget, as everyone is very tight on budget. And I'm sure you're aware that many library resources, we've reduced the number of resources we have available in the last few years. However, libraries prioritize purchasing materials that faculty are directly using in courses or are directly using with research with students as much as possible. So if you make a purchase request and you say this is for a course sharing course, it's being used directly by students, I'm sure that that will receive priority at the campus library that you're addressing that to. Now, going beyond ebooks, looking at journal articles are great for classes. And I think that a lot of faculty, not all faculty by any means, but a lot of faculty view the journal article resources as things just for term papers for undergrads or for advanced research for graduate students. But we have access to a ton of journal articles in a lot of different subjects, and it's really good to get the undergraduates as well involved in the research discourse as early as possible, even if it is a difficult step for them to really get everything out of a research article. So we at the library encourage faculty to use journal articles in their classes, because it also opens up a time for us to discuss with students things about credibility, authority, peer review, a lot of topics that come up in the course of scholarly discourse. It makes the students familiar with them from a younger age in their educational process. Some of us are more senior students. But if you're using journal articles in classes, again, search and confirm that all campuses have the subscription to the journal for the year when the article was published, because sometimes you'll check different campuses, they will have subscriptions to the journal, but they might have subscriptions that start and end during a time period that doesn't include the particular article that you're interested in, okay? And if all the campuses don't have access to that journal, of course you can request it, but more and more of our journals are purchased on what's called big deals, which means that a publisher comes to us and like kind of open their trench coat and say, I've got something really great for you here. Buy these 1,200 journals and you get them for the price of 50. Well, you know, they may not be the 1,200 journals that you need. So but that kind of locks us in budget-wise. So you can request us to buy an individual journal, but it's awfully hard for us to do that. However, if you have an article that your students need that is not available at all of the campus libraries because they don't have journal subscriptions, that's a good time to contact the individual libraries at the campuses and say, hey, I need to license this particular article, this one article for these courses. And at UMKC, it would be the head of resource sharing, and I've shared her name, Jen Salvo Eaton, and the email in the chat for this webinar. But at individual campuses, it might be a different person to talk to about that. But yes, your library can help you to license individual articles if not all libraries have access to those articles for your course share. And now I'm going to pass the next slide on to Grace.
All right. Oh wait, I think did we jump one? Can we go back one? There we go. So we already answered this a little bit thanks to Dr. Peters' question. Everything Scott said about going through the libraries to find journal articles or other materials to use in your course, which of course is very affordable for your students. We want to make sure that when you're using a library resource, you don't just go to the library website, download it, and then share that file, like upload that file into Canvas. I've heard people say, you know, what's the big deal? Or faculty say, well, are the copyright police really going to come out on this? And the reality is, you know, it is against copyright law, and Georgia State is involved in an ongoing lawsuit about sharing files without the proper copyright, without following proper copyright restrictions. So there is that side of things. But more importantly, it's like Scott said earlier, we need that data on how many views and downloads library materials get. Like Dr. Peters was saying, the libraries are undergoing budget cuts on our collections continuously, and we decide what to cut based on the usage data, and of course, actually going to our different subject areas and talking with faculty and making the final decisions. But I was working with a professor the other day who has a class of about 200 students, and he said he had downloaded a newspaper article from the library and uploaded it. And I said, well, we see that one person used it, even though in reality, 200 students have accessed it. So that data is really useful for us. And then the right way to do it then is to use our e-reserves. I think many of you are familiar with our print reserves, that we can take a physical item in the library, put it behind the circulation desk for students to check out, and it's just for the students in your course. But we do have electronic reserves that integrate into Canvas, so students can still access it with the same ease, but it follows all the rules and gives us that usage data. If we don't have something, you can request it. Scott shared the link for that. And then on every campus, if you go to your library webpage and you do a site search for reserves, you're going to find how to go about doing that. And then I think we can go ahead and go to the next slide, talking more about OER. Each campus library does have an OER webpage. And I would really encourage you, in whatever kind of course redesign you're engaged in, to take a look at this, because OER does make such a big impact on students. There's so much out there that sometimes it's hard to find the high quality stuff. We've narrowed it down. Your OER librarians on each campus are happy to help you in evaluating and discovering resources. And then I think one of the biggest things we can help with is licensing and attribution. Even though something's freely available, you might need to attribute it a certain way to use it in your course. Or if you've created something and you've made it freely available, it's important that you still retain most of your copyright through Creative Commons licensing. So we can consult on things like that. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
Just to talk a little bit about something that Dr. Grassman talked about at the beginning. one of the neat things about using open education resources is that as a professor, as a faculty member, you can take an openly licensed resource that's under a Creative Commons license, and you can edit it. You can change it. You can take 2 Creative Commons licensed resources and put together the best chapters from each one and make your own resource along with your own commentary on it. Using open resources isn't just a cost savings move, which is very nice for students. It's also a way of controlling the content that you're using in your course to achieve very specific curricular goals in a way that isn't possible with traditionally published resources. And I think faculty are only starting to become aware of the power that is being placed in their hands to really transform pedagogy using open education resources. And it should be considered as an option when you're looking at course resources, as well as the options of auto access and other ways to save students money.
Great. Thank you so much to both Grace and Scott for your insights. And I think, another take home for the OER is that it can be easily used in the course sharing. So that's why one of the reasons we did this together was that you can easily use that, and then it's able to share with those that you want to share it with because it's open. And so that's a really easy way to make sure that everybody has access to the appropriate materials. So last but definitely not least of our presenters, we have
Did you say prisoners?
No, presenters. Prisoners, yes. Presenters is Ruth Tofold, who's from MU, and she's going to give us a faculty perspective on course sharing. Ruth, are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can see me. Do I need to do something that I'm not doing?
Yeah, hit the little video camera icon, and we'll be able to see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, tell me where that is. Oh, here on the left?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, there you are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting me. I am happy to talk to you about a really terrific experience that I had last year, and that I'm going to continue this coming fall semester as well. I'm a professor in the Department of Architectural Studies at MU, and I am I am teaching a class in historic preservation with students at Rolla at S&T. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that I learned in the process, and also some of the things that might be helpful to people who are new to this. And I certainly want to allow for questions so that we can talk through different possibilities if you are interested in going down that road yourself. So let me begin by saying that when the system came out with this first opportunity on course sharing, I thought it was a great idea, and I already way back then contacted a similar department, actually similar departments on several campuses, and I said, I don't know what we might do, but if you think of something, let's talk. I'm here. And I think I even talked through some possibilities of the things that we needed. And honestly, I didn't hear anything. I heard one thing from one other department chair, but it was clunky and it just didn't seem to work. But at any rate, I was out there and let it be known that I was interested in participating, being a partner. Then, last spring, right before spring semester, then I learned from the S&T campus that this history professor, Jeff Schramm, was going to take a sabbatical, and could I fill in? And
so then it just, things happened really, really fast. I could submit the proposal, and it was approved very easily, and it just worked great. And I don't know if that would have happened if I wouldn't have sent those earlier messages out sometime earlier. I already said, I'm here if you can think of something. And so the need became apparent when there was this immediate need for somebody to take a research lead. So I would encourage people that, just put yourself out there, and it might happen. Maybe for you in a way you didn't expect, but at least that was my experience. I really believe that it's important to make the students feel comfortable at the other campus, at the receiving campus. I'll call the receiving campus. And so I personally drove there over the summer last year to get to know the contact persons that I'd be working with. I talked even to the librarian. I had a campus tour. I put together a PowerPoint, with the local buildings, and because this helped me in developing assignments that were comfortable, because instead of all MU kind of local kinds of stuff, there was a lot of Rolla local kinds of assignments that they could see. And they were both my contact, Jeff Schramm, and the department chair in architectural engineering were absolutely wonderful in working with me and giving me ideas and talking with me. And I felt like that was really terrific, that they were so helpful. So we developed a nice personal relationship, which always helps when you have a personal relationship. I didn't learn until afterwards that I could have put my travel expenses in the proposal. I didn't think of that, but it's all right. I did it on my own dime, but it wasn't a big deal. So I developed a poster, and that was to help to recruit. So not only was it helping the specific group of majors who needed the class, but it was open to anybody else, because here it is a general ed class, and I have students from lots of different departments on the MU campus too, arts and science and engineering and everywhere, nursing, you name it, because it doesn't have a course prerequisite. It's a 4,000 level upper division class, but it doesn't have a specific course that is a prerequisite. So that made it easy for people to jump on board. I'm looking at my notes. I have some notes here. I think that maybe I gave some feedback to Carrie and to Jana about some of the clunky things that probably could be improved, and maybe you fixed that. It was a little bit clunky to know. It was a little bit clunky because if some students need to drop at the very last moment on the other campus, I was not aware, and I couldn't figure out how to communicate with them. And so I think we got that figured out better. Also, another thing that I didn't know until the very last day of class was we get pluses and minuses, and Rolla does not, or at least that department does not. And that's something that I think it would be, useful to know up front. The one thing that there are two more things that I want to mention, and then I would like for you to ask me lots of questions. One thing that I want to mention was I have been teaching online classes for a very long time. We have had an online doctoral program for, 15 years. We were the first one to have one on our campus. So I have lots of experience with online classes. And I really feel strongly that you got to have some real hands-on experiences other than tests. You got to have projects as well as discussion boards, and the students have got to feel like they're digging in and it's relevant to them, because they don't have that personal contact with the teacher. They need to have some things that are real, really real to them. And so I do have a project in my class, and it's one that has worked very well. Basically, what it is that they have to find out a building that they think is eligible to be on the historic trust, and that is not on the trust now, and then do the research on it, go there in person, take the photographs, interview people, and submit on a state of Missouri form their documentation, their research. And it is time consuming and grading. It is true, but it really adds to the richness of the class. And every semester they say this is the best part of the class. The quizzes are important for me to know that they do the reading, because you've got to do the reading. And the discussion boards are a lot of they're fun for me to read. And even though I don't give them a lot of points for it, they're very useful. They are on controversial topics where you get very diverse kinds of perspectives. And that's when the course really becomes alive, with that interaction of discussion boards. And I love it when they have opposing views. I always tell them there's no right or wrong answer, but I want to hear why you are telling me this is your perspective. And so that really adds to the liveliness to the class. So between the quizzes, so they know they're doing their reading, the liveliness of the discussion, and the hands-on kind of the digging in on the relevancy of this in their hometown or in where they're going to school, I think really adds to the quality of the class. And the second thing I want to mention is that I really appreciate the diversity of having students from all over the state, from many disciplines, from both campuses, who are connecting with each other. I would say that my Rolla students are amazing students. They are very good students. And it was just a delight to have them in my course year. So let me open it up for questions.
Hello, this is Chris Costello. I just want to ask like really basic questions, like how long does it take you to really develop one of these courses? What does it actually really look like? Is it all completely online content? You know, the mechanics of it, because I think that's what I really need to think about, if and how I can carve out enough time to make a completely online course. And that's...
Christine, what campus are you on?
Columbia.
Okay, well, I don't know about the other campuses, but at MU in Columbia, there actually are small grants that you can get to develop online classes.
Yeah, I understand, but that doesn't make more time in my day. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what they really look like.
Right, right. There is a course release that comes with this, so you can actually buy out some time. I know one of our faculty members did that. In the course share that I had, I developed the class on my own as an online class before it was a course share. And in our department, there is no way that every course can be an online class, because it's just not the nature of the discipline. But it was a perfect match, I thought, for this particular topic, to have it a online class. In an online class, the work is up front. you've got to have it all figured out. You can't change your mind midstream and say, oh, well, let's not do this project. Let's do something else. And so having a coach like with the meta team on your campus and your instructional designer is really important so that you can get the kinks out. Also, I believe it's a requirement for all of the course share classes to go through quality review so that before it's launched, there is a long series of questions, and what they do is they have a team of instructional designers essentially try to navigate your course before it's launched to students, and that really does help. I work closely with my instructional designer to make sure that it was organized in a way that would make sense, and the students could could get through it in an easy way. So that was some of your questions. I'm trying to remember some of your other questions. Christine, remind me.
I guess I mostly probably just need to actually look at one. I've never taken an online course. I'm only in my 30s, but still. And I just, we're all talking about it a lot on campus and we all want to do it, but there's not a lot of talk of what you just described. Sounds like full-time work for a while. So I've tried to also just understand, so it's all front-loaded. Do you have any lectures? Do you have did you go to was it Tegrity and go do pre-recorded things and just
okay, let me talk about
a realistic vision of what we're talking about when we talk about this.
Right. Let me talk about that. I can't stand listening to myself. It just drives me up a wall. And the course content of my class, it was easy to get on YouTube's. So I have no lectures. I have lots of 3-minute YouTubes that that I want the students to go to. And this was really helpful to me. So between the reading and the YouTubes, they were getting the information from themselves. So I didn't have to go through taping myself. Now, having said that, I noticed Mark Lundstrom is on here too. We have another online class where they do have
somebody is
projects.
Their phone on hold. Somebody's put themselves on hold. I'm going to try to mute everybody, and then you'll have to unmute yourself if you have questions. But that is some nice jazzy music. Okay, how do we mute everybody at once? Anybody know how to mute everybody at once? Okay, sorry. I wonder if we get this out. While Carrie is working on that. Oh, there we go. Okay. If everybody could mute themselves unless they're talking, that would be great. That way, if you do have to put us on hold, we don't have hold music.
Okay. The other thing that's really helped me was somebody made me a visitor in their online class. It wasn't even a topic that I knew anything about or that I was even, going to go that direction, but just being a part of getting the emails on a regular basis and, and peeking in and looking at their syllabi, I thought was really useful. So you're welcome to look at mine. Christine, if you want to join my crew. What department are you in?
That would be really great. I'm in industrial and manufacturing systems engineering.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, I have a lot of engineers in my class, so email me and we'll set you up. That was real helpful if you know somebody on your campus who already is doing this, and so you can kind of be on board with that, not really being on board.
Yeah.
Ruth, would it be okay if I just jumped in for a second? And I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I might have some information that might be helpful to Chris. Chris, you're by the way, I manage instructional designers here at Mizzou. And your question about how long it might take to develop an online course, it really depends on the kind of course that you're looking to develop. You know, it sounds like I know Ruth has had some experiences with our instructional designers that have taken a while, but there are other programs. We have a number of different programs that or sort of levels of involvement that a faculty could engage with instructional designers on, that, you know, again, it could stretch to a year, or it could be a matter of weeks. And it really just depends, excuse me, on what your time is and what availability you have to engage with the project. So really, I would just recommend connecting with an instructional designer, and we can really kind of meet you where you are, what kind of time frame you have, and we can help you to develop an online course or some other version of whatever it is that you're looking to do.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ruth. And that is a great segue into, we have some funding available, so that if you need to take some time to develop either an open course or a course sharing course or a shared course that is open, or that is, you know, auto access, perhaps these funds will help do that. So Ruth is going to stay on the line with us, because I have a feeling there's probably more questions for her. And when we get to the Q&A, we're gonna just go through them all and get them done.
Yes. So I realized we didn't put a slide in here about funding, so we're just going to talk about it, and then we'll put a slide in, and when we post it, then we'll let you all know, since you're a part of it, that it's posted, and so that way you'll have it to refer to as you see fit, and also refer others to, like we talked about earlier. I'll talk a minute about the course sharing part. There's nuances for every situation, so I think if you have questions, reach out, and we are more than happy to help you. So myself, Carrie, is the lead for course sharing, and we'll have my contact information and Jana's for A and OER, you know, at the end, so we can talk about the funding pieces. But for course sharing, the way it's designed is you can get funding up front to help with the development. You can get up to $10,000 per course. Some people just want to share the course that's already available online. You don't have to request funds if you don't need development money. But you can think about things like much of what's talked about, different technologies that are needed, different resources that are needed to put into your budget to show what you need funds for. Like Ruth talked about, wishing she would have known that she could ask for money to travel. It has to be pertaining to the course, not just to go on a trip to Hawaii, because that's fun and we all want to go. But I think it's good to know that if it's something that will be helpful for the course, then that's totally appropriate, and that is why we have development funds. So if you need a microphone or cameras for the class, if there's a different technology that would be helpful that the instructional designers recommend, if there's accessibility things that you would like to add to the course and your university charges for that piece, then adding that in. And so that's why these contacts are very important. And with course sharing, it's a part of the process. So we'll have the due date up in a little bit, but course sharing is due on September 26th. And at that date, that's when the instructional designers will start doing a thorough review with you. They have 2 weeks to review with you, provide input. So you may want to add to your budget at that time. You may want to add some different modalities that they suggest at that time. And that doesn't mean that you don't talk with them early and often, because that's what I would suggest. But it is a part of the process that it has to go through instructional designers at every institution that's involved in the course sharing to ensure that it is a good course for all the students, which is what I know you all want as well. So you can get up to $10,000 per course on the front end. And then after the course is delivered, there is some incentive based on enrollment. And so the enrollment's based on the institution that you are not at. So if you are at St. Louis and you are delivering to all 3 other universities, then it would be based on those 3 other universities' enrollment, or you can share it with just one. There is definitely a lot of variability in that. A lot of them share with one, but there are several that share with at least 2 of the others. So that is up to the course and what the needs are at the other universities. And there's a cap of that. You can receive $300 per student up till $2,000. So it's just an extra bump to your check, and you can use that as you wish when you receive that money. And so if you're teaching 3 shared courses, then it's 6 or it's 9. Okay, 2, 6. There you go. I can't do math. $6,000. So your department also gets 20% on top of that per course. So just a little extra money to incentivize the practice that hopefully we all see the common need for it anyways. So that's just a real quick overview of the funding, but I'm happy to talk to you about your nuances offline. And if you have questions that are more general, we can talk it in QA. Jana, you want to talk about OER?
Thank you. So affordable and open education resources. As we mentioned previously, there's a reason why we brought these units together to talk to you today. These are the units that you will need to contact in order to develop a successful proposal. So I'll just call it A and OER. There is an announcement that went out at the beginning of the month, and it indicated, it provided the links for both programs. Another announcement will go out tomorrow, in case you missed that one. Additionally, we will provide you with the links to our websites and the actual applications themselves. OER is a bit quicker this year. It is due September 4th, which I know is right around the corner for funding for this semester. Don't panic though if you can't get it in the 2-week time period I think we have left, 2 or 3. Because we will have the program offered again for the spring. So there's like a worksheet that will show you all the questions, and you're going to see that we're going to ask about what types of tools are you going to use through educational technology. We're going to want to know if you're using any accessibility tools, because you may want to budget for that. And so on some for instance, on some campuses, the captioning portion is handled by the educational technology unit, and they cover the cost. On other campuses, that's not the case. They charge, I think, per minute of captioning, which I found very interesting. So it will walk you through all the questions. It will walk you through whether or not you want to apply for additional funding from the Diversity and Inclusion Office. They have some additional funds set aside. The type of engagement that you can do through A and OER is you can dip your toe into the water through a textbook review. If you agree to do an open textbook review through one of the review sessions that the library set up, you will get a $250 stipend for just writing a review of the book. Additionally, if you decide to adopt that book or an open book, you are now eligible for an A and OER grant because you've gone another adoption grant. Then there's the next level of engagement is either adopting, adapting and sharing, or creating and sharing your materials. So there's different levels of engagement that you can do with these resources. There's also different levels of saving. So I encourage you to think about open is our goal, but if you're not able to go completely open, there are different levels of funding. One is the affordable funding. So if your required materials total less than $40, you're still eligible. Even if it's more than $40, but it will generate a major cost savings. So a cost savings of at least 50%. Still go for it because we do have a level of funding for that. So you'll go through the worksheet. You will look at the questions, determine which of these units you need to talk with first. You may need to talk with a bookstore about auto access or print-on-demand materials. You may need to start with instructional designs because you have technology needs. Or you may start with the libraries because you want to use open materials and you're not sure where to start, and they can help you look for those materials. Alrighty. And I have a question here. It says, I have 2 classes using OER. Can I submit the proposal for both together? Yes. Can you use both for affordability level? To reach affordability level. Yes. I think is the question, is the answer for that. You can either apply separately or together. A committee will review your application. Sometimes what we learn is that the category that's selected may not exactly be the category that it actually falls into, so they'll assess that. The last opportunity is if you are seasoned at this, which Kellie Grassman is now. You can apply to be a mentor, and so you have to find a faculty member who wants to be mentored. But then you can, if you do a series of at least 3 meetings with them, initial setup, kind of how it's going, and then follow up to help them walk through that process. Let's see here.
All right, so should we go to the Q&As that are pre-submitted?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so we're going to go to the pre-submitted ones, and then we'll come back and Jana will help us check the chat. And then we want you to add in questions, but since some folks pre-submitted, we want to make sure that we got those answered, and then everybody's available. So that's what we want to do. So there was kind of 3 categories because this is 2 programs that we're talking about. So there was 2 questions submitted about both, then a few about just course sharing, and then a few about just A and OER. So those that have been talking and those that have had experience that haven't talked, please feel free to chime in as appropriate based on the questions. And I'm hoping we've answered some of these right now. What is the minimum class size or frequency of course offering needed to make the investment for both A and OER, as well as course sharing, worthwhile from the university's perspective? So I think those are totally different based on the 2 programs. So I'm going to talk about course sharing, then Jana can talk about A and OER. So for course sharing, I think we're on both ends of the coin on this. So we have some very small courses that are very unique, and you don't maybe have the expertise at each of the universities because it's very niche. And so there's some courses where 3 or 4 will join from a different university, but that's better than having one instructor at 2 different universities teaching 10 or 12 courses, 10 or 12 students. Instead, one's teaching those 10 or 12 students. So, so we have as small as that, all the way to bigger courses where this summer we had over 50 come in for a summer course. So I'm sure they could be even much bigger than that, but that's kind of the experience that I've had since I've been here of a big variety. And I think that they can see, the review committee can see benefit in both of those. So I think there's a section about impact. And so explaining that you're offering some expertise that they might not have at all the universities, or course matter that they might not be able to cover, or we're impacting this huge number of students. I think both of those, faculty time spent, saved, students gaining the expertise, all of those things are things you could put in that impact to really describe to the committee how it's going to impact the university system as a whole, each of the universities involved, and then the students. And that's not in any particular order, but I think that that they value all sorts of sizes. But for A and OER, it's a little different.
You're going to make it sound like we don't value all sorts.
I did not mean to do that, but I was talking about mine.
So for A and OER, there is a minimum class size. For MU, it is 50 students. For UMSL, UMKC, and S&T is 15 students. So if you have an idea of a course that you want to share, and you know that it typically maybe has 25 or 10, depending on where your campus is. We also accept collaborative proposals. So if you have another instructor that is teaching additional courses, or it's a sequence of courses. An example that we received was for French 1, 2, and 3 to receive some funding for this. So that worked out just great. As far as frequency goes, at least once a year is preferred. If it's once every other year, that's okay too. I mean, we would probably talk to you about, what is the sustainability support, what kind of sustainability support do you have at your department in terms of the chair? And that's what would make it worthwhile.
I didn't talk about the frequency. I forgot that.
That's okay.
But I think that the way that course sharing views it is that as long as it's not a one and done, that you plan to deliver it as the course is intended in its current format. So it may be, you know, I know some courses are offered once a year because that's just the cycle that it is, and that's fine. I think just explaining that is good, and that we understand that you're not just, oh, I'm going to try this on for size and then in the spring not do it, but I have the extra 10,000 to use for other things. So I think it's the heart of the, or the intent of the matter. So you want to take the next one?
Yeah, the next question, sources of internal grant funding. That grant funding, it comes through the Office of Academic Affairs, which is where Carrie and I work. I'm not sure what additional questions you might have about the grant funding, but essentially you'll apply online. Your proposal will be reviewed by a committee, and then funds will be awarded based on the strength of your proposal.
And then we talked about the tiers, and we'll place the slide in before we post them to talk more about the amount of funding so that you have it right in front of you. So, all right. Next is about course sharing. So some are just interested in trying to find who's interested in course sharing. So this one's around health sciences or nursing. I would say that there are a lot of nursing courses already shared. And so I would be happy to try to connect you, or feel free to reach out to the other universities' nursing departments yourself if you already know people. Either way, I think there's a ton of nursing opportunities available based on what's currently shared, and there's probably even more possible that hasn't been started. Health sciences, I know that there's 2, or actually I think there's 3 new public health courses being shared just this fall for the first time. I know there's been talks about some interprofessional health sciences getting together and making like social work and nursing and pharmacy all share a course because they need to know similar content, or they need to work together to learn how to better serve the patient. So I think there's a lot of opportunities available for that, and I'd be happy to try to connect you if you don't know who to reach out to. So just feel free to email me or call me after this, and we can take the steps to kind of connect you. Are there certain academic areas for greater or less need for course sharing? I don't think so. I think the main thing is that there's a true need at the other universities, and that you're just not like, I decided I want to share this, but none of them need it, but I'm just going to try to share it anyways. But to really be able to distinguish the need and the impact that will be available. And so I think that's the main thing, not just saying, oh, this subject matter can't be covered. And then thinking about kind of what Ruth talked about with making it engaging and making sure the content is applicable for online, because you've got to take that into consideration that some of the students won't be right there 5 minutes away from you if you need to do something in person.
Right.
Ruth, would you add anything else to that piece?
Yeah, I was thinking about a couple of things actually when you were talking. Even though I said my entry in all of this was because of somebody going on sabbatical, that was a one-time sort of thing. But this year, so I contacted them again. I said, can we do this again? Because I knew the faculty member was coming back. And he said, why not? Because he said, I don't have quite as many students. I had 20 last year from S&T, and this year I have 10 so far. I might get a few more. But he said that there are several students who are doing work off campus, that they needed the classwork to have it online. And so it was a perfect match to continue it for them on a one-on-one basis. Secondly, he said the word got out that he thought that the students really liked the class and they were telling other students. And so, and that made me so happy. So now I have students who are not all from architectural engineering, but I'm catching people from other departments too at S&T. So I think it was a matter of getting my foot in the door that one time because of the sabbatical, but there was a life to it that was unfolding that had somewhat of a snowball effect.
Great, thank you. So I think Ruth already spoke to this next question about having difficulty finding a partner. I think we are more than happy to try to help you connect. If you already know someone at one of the universities, reach out like Ruth did, and it may take a little while or it may be instantaneous. I think it probably depends on when you're hitting them.
Yeah, and I would say that your department chair is a key player. I just happened to be a department chair at the same time, so it was really easy for me. But that networking is important in everything in life, but at the department chair level, it's very, very helpful.
Another way that you can find a partner, if you've gone online to your MyVita account, there is a search feature, and it will allow you to search across the 4 campuses in areas of interest, scholarly publications, and grants. And so I know that some chairs are using that when they need to fill a class suddenly because maybe somebody had to leave on medical leave or something like that.
Yes, that's great. I know less about that, but Jana is our expert on that. And then I think the sub-question about is there an option to offer an open course without a campus partner at the campus? The answer is no. You need to have someone at each of the universities that you're working with. The secondary campus part is very small compared to where whoever's teaching the course and that their contributions, but I think they're still important part, and also the course is listed under their name at their institution so that the students don't have to worry about transferring or registering in a different system. Any of those pieces, trying to make it as simple as possible for the student, and so it has to be listed under someone at that institution. If you wanted to do something like that, I think that would be more in the cross-enrollment space, and I'd be happy to talk with somebody offline if that's needed. And then the last one for course sharing is I have a couple of courses I think might be good, but I don't know the faculty. And so I think we've talked about that kind of in that same question as well. But if somebody has any sub questions based on these 4, please shout and we'll talk about it. Anybody?
This is Arif Ahmed from UMKC. A quick question I have is, so I already have identified a colleague at another campus. In terms of developing the application, do I start with the instructional designer on my campus here, or do we simultaneously connect with both campus instructional designers for ITS?
For ideas, I think you're welcome to reach out to both of them. I think usually the one where the teaching instructor is located is more heavily involved, but both of them have to sign off in order to for the course to be delivered. Mark, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just say start with the instructional designer on your campus, and then the faculty member on the other campus will actually be working with their instructional designer on their campus. So once in a while, the 2 instructional designers may need to connect and talk about things, but mostly that's between the faculty. So I would start with the designer on your campus.
And I have another question. So most of the conversation, I think, for intercampus course sharing so far has been with regards to asynchronous online courses. We were considering somewhat of a hybrid course because it's actually a study abroad course that we want to deliver on both campuses. So is that acceptable, or does it have to be asynchronous?
I think most of them are asynchronous, but some have a synchronous component. The study abroad sounds a little different than probably what we have typically shared, and so I'd be happy to talk with you offline because I think we're open to all kinds of unique opportunities, but we want to talk through that and talk through it with your instructional designers to make sure that you set up the proposal in the best light possible to show that impact.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would just like to make a pitch for the role of the instructional designer. They really are trained to do this stuff, and so they play a real critical role in online education.
Okay.
That's great.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Sure.
Are there specifically assigned instructional designers on each campus for ICS? And can I have those names?
There's a contact page, Mark,
okay.
Right? On that. But what else would you add to that?
Yes. So I don't know what campus you're on.
UMKC.
UMKC. Okay, I can't speak to UMKC about how they're organized. At Mizzou, each academic unit has specific instructional designers that you would work with, but I can't speak to UMKC. So just starting with the general contact there would probably be best.
We're getting a chat from Molly Mead, who's the instructional design director at UMKC, and she is suggesting emailing online@umkc.edu, and they will get you contacted with the right person.
Yeah, and there was a slide earlier that was in the instructional design part with all of the general contact information so that you can at least get a starting point, and then they may lead you to a specific person, like Mark might lead you to somebody in A&S if you were at MU. Molly might lead you to somebody else, but that get you started.
I would just go stand in front of her door and wait for her to come back from lunch.
Now she's going to really chat you. Okay, the next question is around A and OER.
Yes,
Hannah.
So this question talks about the lack of instructor supplemental materials that you get with things like Cengage and with other programs. And so this is kind of both an OER and a bookstore question. If you choose to adopt materials or adapt materials, but you also need these supplemental resources, you can still apply for the program under the affordable or the major cost reduction area. As far as incentivizing it, we do incentivize it, and so this is the way it works. If you are wanting to create your own original work, your own original ancillary materials, and you do not need a textbook in order to deliver the class, it's just all these ancillary materials that you created that are your own original work, you can apply for a create and share application. If you have a textbook and you think, man, I really need some more things to go with this, I need to supplement this textbook with some things, and I've got a few items that I'm going to add to this. Since you're supporting the course with those ancillary materials, you're supporting that textbook, you can apply for an adapt and share. Again, it still has to be, available to share via Creative Commons or to the public domain, but you can still apply for a grant.
Great. All right, so those were all the pre-submitted questions. So now's the time for you all to unmute if you are able to talk and us to have a conversation about whatever questions you have. Or if you're not able to, then Jana's kind of monitoring the chat function to read out loud any questions that are submitted.
And we do have 3 already submitted. This first one is for the application process at UMKC. We're required to have online courses certified before the course goes live. Therefore, do we still need to meet with an instructional designer prior to submitting a proposal for OER funding? And my short answer recommendation is yes, because you'll want to make sure that the materials and the softwares that you use are supported within Kansas City. I want to see if Molly has any additional response to that. I think I caught her off guard. So I would recommend to follow up with Molly Mead's team and online at umkc.edu for that. The second question is about instructional design. I teach for multiple universities, and one method that I prefer is the flipped model. Are there any courses using this model? Are there any faculty members on this call that are currently using the flipped model?
Well, I do, but not for this class.
Okay.
Because my course share class is asynchronous.
Okay. So what would you recommend a person to do if they are interested in a flipped class? What's their first step?
Again, I would certainly work with your instructional designer. The whole purpose of a flipped class is that you are engaging during a laboratory type of experience. And that's the part that's expensive, because you need the kind of equipment to make that work. Again, I think it is so specific to what you're trying to do that's why you really need to talk to your instructional designer.
Right. So I see a few people have chimed in that they currently use the flip model in hybrid courses. And if it's all right, I might share your email with this person so that they can sort of ask you about the process on our own campus, or again, go to instructional design. I want to back up to the first question. I said, yes, you need to go through the instructional design process. Molly Mead says, no, but a meeting would be nice, just to touch base. The third question is auto access. Someone asked earlier how the students would be notified about auto access. Would it not be recommended for instructors to provide that information via email to the students ahead of the course and/or in the course syllabus? This would also apply to OER. So both for OER and for course sharing, do you all contact your students ahead of time?
Yes. I already opened up my class. I always open it up a week early because I know that some people are off campus and they need to get their books. And I just start communicating. I typically talk to my students by email maybe 3 times a week, maybe more, but that there is continuous discussion, and I always do open the class up early.
Wonderful. Sherry, do you have a comment on notifying students?
Yeah, this is Dale.
Oh, sorry, Dale.
That's all right. My computer died, so I'm on Sherry's phone now. So we provide for auto access. We provide faculty with a little blurb of information that they can use in their syllabus. They can use it, post it in Canvas, and if they want to, they can email it out to students. So we try to make that assist in that communication from faculty to student as best that we can.
Great. Thank you so much. Other questions about either how to apply, what makes a good proposal, how do I get started?
This is Tom Phillips at MU, and I had a question about some content I've created. I use a lot of images that are under Creative Commons licenses, but they often say things like this image is licensed under a Creative Commons attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives license. Is my use of these images a commercial use since students pay for the class?
I'm going to ask Scott and Grace to chime in on that.
I'll chime in on that. No, it is not. It's not a commercial use, so you're allowed to use that for your class. It would only be a commercial use if you took the materials and tried to sell it in a book form. But for your class, it is a non-commercial use. It's materials that are just used within the context of your class.
Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions about your materials?
Hi, this is Michelle Smith. I just have a quick question. By the way, thank you for reading my other questions. I appreciate the feedback on that.
Sure.
Earlier, you mentioned that we had a couple of weeks to submit our proposal for the OER application. And then you also mentioned there was another process beginning in the spring. That confused me slightly. So here's my question.
Sure.
I'm going to be developing a course for the spring semester. And so I'm trying to determine, do I need to apply now for funding for the spring, or should I wait till spring to do that?
If your plans are to deliver this course utilizing affordable and open materials, you would want to apply this fall for that funding.
Okay, thank you.
So just for both programs, we have 2 cycles available because we know everybody thinks of new things they want to do, or their timing's a little different. And so we just try to offer 2 opportunities available, but you would have to do it at least the semester prior, both for course sharing and for A and OER.
The reason why our deadline is so quick and so early is because we are trying to ensure that you will have time, once notified, you will have time to decide if you want to continue with your plan and do the award, or if you want to revert to publisher materials. And so that's, hopefully you'll get notified before the bookstore deadlines for ordering materials. And so that's why it's so fast.
Thank you.
What other questions do folks have?
Did this webinar provide what you thought it was going to be?
The chat.
Yeah, I got a yes. Great.
Well, I think we should go ahead and talk about next steps. And if somebody else has a question, we will stay on for a few minutes afterwards just to make sure that we have covered everybody. But the next steps. So Jana talked about A and OER deadline on September 4th. The course sharing deadline is on September 26th. And as I talked about earlier, note that September 26th, after that point, the instructional designers will have a 2-week period to review, provide comments, and allow you to modify. But I would say talk to them early and often as you go through the process, especially if this is your first time. It's good to get some input early so that you can start on that road if you need to discover a few things about what you want to add to your proposal. And then when will you know if you receive funding? So that's kind of what Jana was talking about. I believe the deadline for the bookstores to know is sometime that week after, so you'll know by October 12th if you've received the funding or not. And I think I would say for both of us, if you don't receive it the first time, that doesn't mean don't try again, because you'll get feedback of why it wasn't, and so you can have things to think about and things to modify for the next time.
Absolutely.
And then for course sharing, the date that you'll find out is by November 16th. And some will deliver that spring, and some will deliver it in the summer or fall following. It just kind of depends on what your course is and how much time you need to develop it, kind of getting to that question that was posed earlier of how long you need, and some need longer than others. So,
because you can utilize a course that you're already teaching. This could be a new course. So,
And then there was all kinds of resources, and I didn't want to duplicate all the slides because I thought that would not be necessary. So I just put on here our websites for each of the programs, and then the slide numbers for each of the other resources available. And I know I received some for diversity, equity, and inclusion while we've been in this session, and so I'll add those to the resources section before we post it. But I hope that this has given you a wide variety of information and see some of the benefits of exploring either or both of these opportunities. And I just say that Jana and I will at least stay online if you have any questions for the next few minutes. But we really appreciate your time, and we hope to see many of your names on proposals here in the fall or spring. So it's been such a pleasure. thank you all to the presenters for giving your time and your resources, and to all those that contributed to it offline. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
It looks like there's a scatter.
Bye.
Bye.
We're just waiting to see if we have any questions. People are heading out.
Does anybody have any questions?
Hello, this is Val Bader.
Hi.
Hi. Can you just review with me, please, when the application proposals are due for course sharing?
Yeah, they are due by September 26th.
September 26th, okay. And I did go into my Vita and I did find how to locate instructors and professors on other campuses. And so there are separate proposals for course sharing and separate proposals for AEOA and OER resources, correct?
Yes, there is. And actually both of us have kind of a Word document so you can copy and paste, because some of the information is similar, but then there's some unique pieces based on the thing, so the application and the content of what we're talking about. And so I would suggest in one or the other, at least putting it in Word so that you can copy and paste the sections that are the same.
Okay.
I mean, it just make it easier on you.
Yeah.
And then you can save it, so if one doesn't get accepted, then you can just modify it slightly instead of starting from scratch.
And frankly, the reason why you can't apply for both at the same time is because that's more fancy than we have than we got set up yet.
Technical.
Yeah.
That's coming.
But right, hopefully, right? But I think that would at least allow you to not recreate. You could just copy and paste. So that would be my personal suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. And so we'll know if I see the slide now, we'll know if we receive funding on November 16 and course sharing funding requests are due September 26. Terrific.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's a link straight to the application, but the website is on the next slide. So you can get to that if you want that Word template.
Okay.
So,
and
okay.
So, will I get access to these slides?
Yes, we're going to post them, and I will also email the group and try to attach them as long as it's not too big, but at least tell you where they're located if not.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Hi, I see some others on the line. Is there any questions anybody has?
Let's see here. We got a lot of thanks for the webinar. Could we email the slides or link? We confirm that. Good overview of resources. I hear somebody typing away.
There you go.
Sorry about that. That was me. I got to mute.
No problem. Yep, there's still several on the line. We've got.
Yeah, so we're just going to hang out. And if you have questions, then chime in and we'll hang out for another 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, we're down to 15. So. Oh, and we're down to 11. Like watching a countdown clock. 10. 9.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but if anybody needs to see something, you can let me know.
I feel like for the 9 that are on, we could sing.
I am not going to sing. They will drop.
Oh, there was one person that dropped immediately when they heard that. Now we're down to 8. I see Kathy Keeley, Kathy Miller. There's a Rachel and a Zachary still connected with us.
Like Karen, it looks like, and then somebody on the phone.
We're on the phone.
Oh. Your phone number?
Mm-hmm.
See, technology is not.
Well, I think we're
Okay, I think we're going to try and get off. As long as if somebody else has a question, then feel free to email or call us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.